All right. So starting in three, two, one. Bum, bum, bum. Okay. So my name's Axel. We are here on the eve of election day, and we're hitting it up with the dynamic duo, La Cristal y el Axel. I am the civic engagement manager at Poder, and I'll kick it off to you, Crystal, to introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. I am Cristal Figueroa. I am the data scientist at Poder. We are the dynamic duo. We
The
like
Chaos Crew.
the chaos crew, the creators of the chaos crew.
Yeah. But today we're trying to mellow it down, just bring some quick info. Election day is tomorrow, and just kind of not necessarily set expectations, but just have some real talk about hey, what have we been looking at? What's been important so far, what we'll be looking at tomorrow, and some takeaways, important takeaways about this work and going forward. So just quick check. How are you feeling right now, Crystal?
I'm super anxious. It feels like everything's on the line for this election season, especially in North Carolina. It feels like we can either go 10 years, we can either take one step forwards or we can take 10 steps back. It all comes down to tomorrow. And it definitely, I guess the best analogy is like we're about to go into the boxing ring. It feels like it, and like the 12th round, and either we have a knockout or we're like ding ding ding, it's very it's I don't know. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
There's a lot of adrenaline. A
Yeah,
lot.
I feel you. I feel like I tend to go como un poco al revés, como que especially like whenever there's like a speaking event, like I kind of I will just wind down.
Mm.
And then maybe it's a trauma coping mechanism, but you just numb down and just whatever happens, happens, and we'll deal with it later. Anyway,
Exactly. I know the feeling. And I don't want to go into like plan B of like fix it mode,
yeah,
So like, yeah,
yeah.
I feel that. I feel that.
But no, I'm excited as well. I think it's been a good experience to actually spend since 2020, almost since that time, working in this space, and it's a necessary work. It's a reason that why I stayed in North Carolina, to try to do something and establish a foundation for a lot of our young folks, and our older families as well.
Right.
But anyways, let's get started. Let's give our folks some context of what to expect tomorrow.
When I went to go vote this past weekend, during early voting, most of these races down the ballot were uncontested, and they were only Republicans that were running.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like they want to stay in power, and they make us believe that they are in power and they want to stay in power, when in reality, the Latinx population, if we were to like stand together and bond together, we could actually make critical change in these elections.
Yeah.
We have the numbers.
And we've seen examples of it, and I think there's como que apenas vamos despertándonos, ¿verdad? Porque, and that's why we started doing the work with Poder and many other great organizations, grassroots nonprofits have kicked it up a notch. But we're in some ways still young. But examples, fruit of that is what happened in 2020, que fue uno it was a consolation prize, right? Of seeing someone like Ricky Hurtado get elected. But even those are like battles that now you have to defend, right? You can't lose ground to them. And so like what you're saying, right? Votar no importa, elections don't matter. But what I was sharing to some folks early this last month was like, someone's going to decide the budget for schools. Someone's going to decide the budget for rural hospitals. Someone's going to decide whether or not to fix your road. Someone's going to decide whether or not you get to have contraceptions, or choose to have an abortion if that is the best option for you or what you want to do. Yeah. And someone's going to decide whether local law enforcement works with immigration officials. That's and right. So you can't just be like hands off, because obviously they're coming out and voting, and they want to institute their agenda. And just taking a seat back is definitely going to bite you in the ass.
Yeah. It's fucking scary. I mean, I see people that are like, oh no, we don't vote, or we don't want to vote, or whatever. I'm like, so you're letting someone else rule and dictate over what you think and what you believe, right? regardless of how these elections turn out, I do want to say that during our time with Poder, we have made impactful change in the community. So I think that, yes, it's all doom and gloom, but we have made some impactful change in the community. Just during 2020, from 2020 to now, we were able to expand our Latinx electorate, expand the number of voters by at least 30,000 people. 30,000 people. That's a huge ass number, especially in North Carolina when the races are like so incredibly close.
Yeah, like
That's
less than
huge
1,000
number.
votes, less a few hundred
Exactly.
votes.
Yeah. So, and even now, I just checked the numbers a couple hours ago, and we have at least 5,000 people that we have contacted, that we know we have contacted, that have been in our radar, that have come out and voted. We don't know how they voted, but the fact that they came out and they voted says a shit ton. It means that we need to come out and we need to talk to our people. We need to come out and we need to talk to our comunidad, because that's where the change happens. And I think we've proved it time and time again.
I'm with you. I mean, my like little spiel of like why this work is porque para mí, I'm this in between generation of came to the US as a young immigrant and still don't have the access to the ballot like that. Pero I know that teaching a lot of these young folks that are born here, that have grown up here, that have had their whole life in North Carolina or in the US, that they have the rights and that they deserve to like exercise those, regardless of whether their parents were excluded or not from it, is crucial to them, like having some ownership over what their homes look like, what their schools look like. So I'm totally with you. But no se aprende de la noche a la mañana, right? Toma esfuerzo. We have to truly continue investing as we've started, and part of it involves people like nosotros actually doing these conversations and telling you about it en una manera que we'll switch entre español, inglés, we'll do we won't talk that professional. Sometimes I talk like an old person, but that's regardless of the fact. but yeah, this part of the work to start building that relationship so that people know that like it's not some like weird things that old people do. No, son cosas que te afectan ahora. And it clicks for people on like immigration stuff, but it's frustrating how it doesn't click for almost everything else, right?
Right. It's like, yes, immigration is important. And because we all know, so at least one of our family members, doesn't have the documentation needed to be here. But, and at the same time, viene junto con pegado, dice mi mamá. Like, I mean, you can't just say, I care about immigration, but I don't care about the economy, right? Like, you can't say that, because at the end of the day, the reason that our parents were like in such survival mode was because the living wage was like por los suelos.
Yeah.
And it has continued that way. And studies show that we are going to be the first generation probably that is not going to be better off than our parents. So that's not fair. Like, we also want to succeed in this life. So yes, you can't just be like, I care for one thing, but I don't care for the other thing, porque todo viene junto con pegado. Es uña y mugre. Okay? Like you can't have one without the other.
Okay, so kind of to round this out, for tomorrow, voting has been happening. If you're waiting for tomorrow, please just go vote, because it's been happening already. We have over 2 million folks in North Carolina that have already voted. Honestly, a lot more could have voted already. Tomorrow's the last push. If you voted, great. If you have others that need to vote, get them out tomorrow. Polls will be open from 6:30 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. So from sun up to sunset or after that. And the most important thing is that you reach out to a few folks that should or have some chance to do it, because it really does matter in North Carolina, right? Whether it's at the state level, there's been races decided by 400 or less votes. At the local level, whoever's that sheriff, whoever's that school board member, it may be like a couple hundred or even less votes, right? So, and it will affect you eventually. So Turnout matters. It matters that we like tell our folks, porque, especially for us, and we'll have like a kind of a reaction conversation later and try to inform people what it means. Because after someone gets elected, that's when the rest of the work starts, right? Of like,
Oh,
oh, now you're in office. This is what we need.
yep.
Oh, now you're in office. Don't vote for this bad thing. You're
Right.
not change this, bad policy. And so that accountability work is the follow-up. But we need to like at least know por quién votamos antes and
Yep.
then do that work.
And we have great resources on our website. The North Carolina Board of Elections website is also a great resource to find out where your polling location is going to be at. And Axel, why don't you tell them where the fuck you're going to be at tomorrow?
Yeah, so para mañana, we should be out and about trying to talk to some of our folks and get a sense of like what brings out people to vote. For me, I've gotten a chance to be at the early voting sites, and it's been great to connect with folks as to like what brings them out. I had a like a 20-minute conversation with a grandma that has 6 grandchildren, and she's like, I'm here for them. I'm here for them because our schools need to be better for them, because they need to feel like they have a sense of a future. And so that's been wonderful. I've pretty excited the fact that like the good friends que, mire, ya tienen papeles, no siguen como yo, but who have naturalized recently, or friends who are now of age, and then, engaging with them and just letting them know, hey, elections, this is important. And then being like right on it, be like, okay, when do I go? Cuando, como? That's been reassuring, but it's been like kind of those glimpses of like, the wheels starting to turn, but we're going to have to keep like, keep it on the accelerator. We're
That's
trying to move
right.
away from gas cars here, just accelerate. But
That's
anyways, what's been a highlight for you?
Well, tomorrow I'm gonna be at our headquarters all entire day, probably working on making sure that we get out this final push. But for me, the highlight has been, like you said, it's seeing that turn in people. It's seeing that change. Not only do I see it like in my family, I also see it
Mhm.
on social media. I also see it like going through TikTok and seeing like, okay, people actually care about this, like the election, like a su modo, but they're starting to talk about it.
Yeah.
And that's super, super important for us because we need to stop going out of this. We need to get out of this circle where it's like just people in politics share what's going on in politics.
Mm.
Like we need to get out of that circle and start realizing, that these things van más allá que nosotros. These things extend far more than what it only affects us. It's going to extend even 7 generations in the future. The changes that we do now, especially because we see that the Republican Party is trying to push us back to days prior to voting rights, to days prior to Roe v. Wade. So they're trying to push us back, and we need to continue pushing forward.
Yeah.
We don't want to go back. We're not going back.
Yeah. I feel you. No, truly well said. Just to recap, mañana, election day, 6:30. You can be there at 6 if you want. I'm sure lines will already start forming to 7:30 p.m. If you're there late, stay in line. We have races for U.S. Senate, for the U.S. House, for the North Carolina Supreme Courts, for the Court of Appeals. It's a long ballot. If you need to figure out how to look up your ballot, just hit us up anywhere. If not, look through our feeds and you'll find some resources. But local races are important. You're voting on referendums to like fund schools, to fund housing, to fund roads. It's as any election, it is important because it will affect your everyday life. And we'll be checking in afterwards, after all of tomorrow's wild ride, to kind of have some real talk, right? Talk
Yeah,
about like that elections are opportunities, but can also have consequences.
that's
And
right.
being real with our people about that is important for us to actually like establish some level of trust of like
Mhm.
what happens and why these matter.
Yeah, and I also want to remind people, your vote, it's not, they didn't give it to us. When I say they, I mean the system. The system didn't give it to us, especially our communities, the Black and brown communities. It wasn't free. We fought for this vote. The people before us, our ancestors before us, fought for this privilege to have this vote. We need to use it.
Mhm.
We need to use it. We need to put it to practice.
Yep. Enough said. Bueno, Cristal, para la próxima, I will see you in person tomorrow, and I hope kids who tuned in or who watched some of this get their folks out to vote.
Let's do it.
Dale.